Morning. So, doing something a little bit different on this video. I seem to say that on many of the start of the videos, I'm doing something a little bit different. But this one is different because A, this is a brand new album, unopened, and B, I'm going to talk about it in the context of their live show, which I saw last night. So, this is the album, so I'm just going to move this across, by a Canadian indie rock slash dream pop band, Men I Trust. So they've been around for probably about nine, 9 or 10 years now, but in their current form, um, a little bit, a little bit less. I think they, with the current members, they got together in 2016, and I discovered them about when 2020, 2021. So I got on the hype train a little bit late, but I think they are a good study in, how can I put it, the way music is discovered nowadays. And I'm only speaking for myself as man, a man in his, let's say, late 30s, early 40s. I'm sure young people, it's very different. And by looking around the concert last night, most of the people were pretty young. I'd say they were in their early mid 20s. I was probably one of the older people there. Um, but so what happened is that I got Spotify in 2019, end of 2019. And I started off by listening just kind of the music I liked and I was familiar with, and then I used it as a way to kind of listen to some of the back catalogs or the more recent releases of bands that I used to listen to and I hadn't listened to in a while. Um, and then I started looking for new music. And Spotify is, I'd say, better than YouTube for recommendations. The algorithm they use to take the music that you listen to, the music that you like, the ones that get the most plays, and then construct a playlist for you or recommended albums for you. They do that pretty well. A lot of the albums they recommended have been, I've gone on to absolutely love. I'd say maybe my album of last year, and when I say album of last year, I mean the album I listened to the most was a Spotify recommended electronic producer who gets less than 1,000 plays per month. Like he's just some random guy in England who, um, but the album that I listened to of his was just, it was like exactly what I'd been looking for, and it's so great. But these guys, same thing. I saw the name on the recommended. I was scrolling through Spotify, and I saw the recommended songs, and it said "Men I Trust," and it had this picture. I can't remember exactly. I think it was like a cartoon mouse walking, whistling, and it was for the song "Tail Whip," which is one of their bigger songs. It's not. I wouldn't say it's their biggest song, but it's one of the more popular ones. And for whatever reason, maybe it was the cover art, or maybe it was the name "Men I Trust," kind of a strange name. And I clicked on it, and I liked the song. And from there, when you listen to a song and you like it, you give it a heart, then you often get playlists offered to you, which will have more of that band and similar bands in it. And so gradually I listened to more and more of their stuff. And then within, a few months, I was listening to the full albums, and here we are. It was the end of 2022. The tour was announced, and for my birthday this year, a couple of months ago, my birthday, my wife bought me tickets to the concert, and so I attended their concert last night. And at the concert, at the merch table, I bought the CD, and I think that's a pretty cool example in how the modern music industry in general, but not even just the industry, because I think the industry's got a lot of problems, but more like the way that, well, you can just, what I just explained, the way that you can go from discovering music just from by chance. And I guess it was in the old days, they did that with radio play, didn't they? No one listens to the radio anymore. But You'd hear a song on the radio, maybe you'd go out buy the CD, you'd like it. Well, now it's in some ways it's a lot easier to do that because you have so much music in front of you. With something like Spotify, you just have unlimited music, and that can be a blessing and a curse. But for me, I found it to be more and more of a blessing. I've just discovered so much music and recent music because I went through stages over the last 20 years where I got very stuck in, as everyone does, stuck in the music of my youth. And there's nothing wrong with that. The music you like is the music you like. And I still very much, very much am, I guess, rooted to the 90s. But Spotify has allowed me to really find new music and not just new releases by bands I liked before, but completely new bands I'd never heard of before. So I really appreciate. I know Spotify has problems. They do shit compensation for artists, but it's allowed me to support these guys by going to their buying 2 tickets to their concert and buying a physical album. And I would have bought the physical album sooner if any bloody store in this country stocked it, which they don't. I've been looking for this for the last 6 months at least. I've searched on the physical music store websites, and none of them, either they have it not listed or they have a vinyl import which is like $60, or they have there's nothing. There's like, you would search that they'll have no listing for it whatsoever. So the other thing I was going to do, I was going to order it. You can order it directly from their website, but with shipping it costs double. I was going to buy this album and their more recent album, the Intourable album, but for the two albums, with exchange rate, Canadian, because they're a Canadian band, Canadian dollars to New Zealand dollars, plus the shipping, it's going to cost me double the price of the albums with shipping. So say two albums is what, like, say $40. It's going to cost me $80 to get it shipped here. And there's being a fan, but only to a point. I can't, and that's true for so much of this stuff. Shipping is such a killer to New Zealand. In America or in Europe, you guys probably maybe can't relate to this as much. I'm sure shipping can be a problem sometimes, but here you're shipping to the other side of the world, to a little isolated island in the South Pacific. It's gonna always cost something, and with COVID, the shipping prices just went mental. They've come down a little bit more recently, but they haven't returned to normal. And even at normal, they weren't exactly great either. So that's kind of a side rant. But so they played last night. They played at a venue called the Power Station, which is a medium. I don't know how you'd even class it. It's not an arena. It's a few steps below. It's, I guess, what you'd call a theater. We talk about club shows, theater shows, arenas, stadiums. Okay, so it's the kind of the steps, and I'd say the capacity would be about 1,500 at a guess. Um, so as I'm an older person now, I'm not like geriatric, but I'm not a young man. And one thing I can't stand is what would I say? Standing around waiting for bands to come on in crowded venues, and especially standing through support acts that I have no interest in seeing. And I've just talked about discovering new music, but I find the live venue isn't the way for me to discover new music. And I've had so many memories of when I was young of standing and waiting for hours through live, terrible, loud support acts. So we really tried to time it so that we got to, it was over in the city. So we drove over the city, got a park, waited a bit in the car and walked very slowly. And just as we were walking up, I could hear the support band was still going. And while the door guys were sorting out our armbands and our tickets on the phone and stuff, the support band finished. And I was like, thank God, we've timed that. And on the website, it said they came on stage at 9:30, and that was 9:15 when we walked in the door. 15 minutes later, bang on 9:30, they took the stage. That is my kind of concert. In Japan, they're famous for that. The band comes on. There's none of the Axl Rose fucking making the crowd wait for 3 hours, which I have memories of bands when I was young doing the same thing. Fucking Smashing Pumpkins, I remember coming on like an hour after the time that they were supposed to come on. And you're standing in this crowded, crushed, hot, stinky crowd, just standing there waiting for the band to come on. Anyway, they came on bang on time. Just before they started, I went over to the merch table and all the t-shirts were sold out. They had about 3 or 4 CDs left and a few pieces of vinyl. And I saw this one here, which is the main one I've been looking for, Oncle Jazz. In hindsight, I kind of wish I'd also got Untourable album, but I'm not sure they had that. I think they had some of the EPs. This is an album released in 2019. 23 tracks. Now they say these guys are indie. I don't know to what extent they're independent. You can see their Return to Analog, Factor, and also supported by the Canadian government. So a lot of countries support the arts, don't they? And they offer like grants or benefits or kind of like almost like not a scholarship, but they kind of give money to performing artists to support their work, whether that be visual artists or movie makers and I know Sweden in particular. I don't know if they still did, but I remember bands like in the 2000s, like the Hives and don't know what other ones. Oh, Millencolin. They were kind of known that they had been supported by the Swedish government in the time before they became big. And some people were like, "Oh, what? You guys aren't very punk. You guys were supported by your government." But I think that's a great thing. Supporting the arts is such a vital thing. Now, of course, that can run off the rails pretty quickly when you start, who judges what art is worthy. And there are some cases, even recently in New Zealand, there was a case of a poet, and some of the poetry she produced was a little bit, I don't know, confrontational, but towards a certain sector of society. And some people were like, why are the government paying for this? And that's a side issue. But yes, so they were supported by the Canadian government. These guys are French Canadian. They're from Quebec. I think they're based in Montreal. They sing in English, but when they speak, they've got that very noticeable French Canadian accent. It's kind of a mixture of the American kind of twang with the French accent mixed together. The core members of the group is a female vocalist, guitarist, Emmanuel, but people call it Emma Prol. The bassist, Jesse Caron or Sharon, and the keyboarder, Dragos Chirac. She has the same name as the former French president, Jacques Chirac. Remember him in the 90s? He was the guy that restarted nuclear testing on Mururoa Atoll in French Polynesia. Lots of people didn't like that. On stage last night, they had also a live drummer, Eric Millet or something, and a other guitarist. Don't know his name. Probably check that, but they put on a great live show. As you get older, going to see live music can sometimes be frustrating, I guess, because it's a young man's game. And I don't like being in super crowded places. I'm not like agoraphobic or anything, but I just don't like being in super crowded places. People annoy me easily. There was some guy, as you know, in New Zealand, there's no most countries, I'm sure it's the same, no smoking whatsoever indoors, whether that's vape or old old cigarettes or whatever, joints. Or some douchebag behind me was vaping, and it stunk like shite. Whatever vape flavor he was using, it was absolutely awful. And I kept getting these strong whiffs of it. And halfway through, I fucking turned around and I was trying to see who was doing it. I was like, "Oi, fuck off. Stop. It's fucking awful. You're imposing your disgusting shit on everyone around you. I didn't. But I you know, you get these kind of frustrations as you get older. Maybe even when you're younger, you get that. I don't know. And maybe I'm overreacting, but it's true that it was annoying me. But I tried to kind of put that out of my mind and enjoy the music. And for the most part, I really did enjoy the concert. Some of the music got a little bit samey in the middle section, but I think I've got some really excellent songs. From this album in particular, the songs that I like are Tail Whip. That was the first song I ever heard. Um, Seven, that was, I think that's kind of one of their bigger hits. The crowd really went mental for that one. Porcelain, they didn't play last night, but I love that song. Kind of a little bit disappointed they didn't play that song. Show Me How, I think that was the last song. That's the song that's got the most plays on Spotify. That's got like 200 million plays or something. So it's a pretty big song in the indie world, at least. They played some other music from the rest of their career. They played, I think, the last song in the encore. They played a more recent song called Billy Toppy, and that's kind of a more rock. It starts off with a really cool bass line. Almost sounds like a Peter Hook, New Order style bass line. And it's got a more of a rock feel to it. But yeah, that I really like that song. Sugar, oh, they did that one. That's from the Untourable album. There was the other one that I really liked. They played. Or the most recent single, which I'm not going to try and remember now. But anyway, they played a good range of stuff, new and old. Ring of the Past. That was the one I was just thinking of. Sorry, Ring of the Past. They put on a good show. That kind of music, because what they are is, like I said, indie dream pop, and with that kind of dream pop, which tries to evoke a very ethereal, somewhat quiet, you know, the dynamic of the quiet instrumentation, the keyboards, the drums, and things like that. Sometimes I think would work a lot better in a smaller venue and a much quieter, toned down set. I would really love to see them in, like, you know, it's not realistic, obviously. It's like saying I want to see Metallica play in my front room, you know. But it would be cool to see these guys, because especially because of their sound, in like almost like a club, more intimate, and turn the sound down a little bit so that some of the nuances of the instrumentation can come through. Her voice, Emma's voice, is very almost delicate. She's got a beautiful voice. Her voice is quite one-dimensional, and I don't mean that in a criticism. It just is. It's not like a super powerful where she belts out, you know, belts out Whitney Houston style or anything like that. She's kind of got, I don't even know how you would describe it, lilting, childlike, but it matches the music perfectly. And she has got a lot of charisma as a front woman as well. There's something very magnetic about her. It's not just because she's pretty or anything like that. She is an attractive girl, woman, female, but there's something. She has an X factor to her. I can see why the two guys, Dragos and Jesse, because she started just as a guest vocalist on their earlier work. They had multiple vocalists. If you listen to their first few, like, whatever releases you want to call them. But in, I think, 2016, they asked her to join full time as their vocalist, which she did, and I can see why they did ask her, because she has a magnetic something about her. Like I said, an X factor that you can't quite put your finger on, but there's something about her that really is attractive. And I don't mean that in the physical sense only. I mean in another way. But I think her voice would be really, really work really well in a smaller, more intimate, quieter setting. But that's probably not going to happen because they're at the point now they're doing world tours. They just came out of Asia. They played Japan, Korea, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Philippines, Indonesia. They're going to Australia today after they've just finished in New Zealand. They've toured around America and Canada for years, and Europe as well. They've been to South America, so they're at that level now where they are playing bigger venues. And I think it's only, at least in the medium term, short and medium term, it's only going to go up. It's not going to go down. So, for example, seeing them at a festival outdoors, I don't think would serve their music as well. I'm glad I get to see them indoors in their own show, not a restricted set. They played for an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and 20 minutes, which for me is the perfect length for that kind of band. If you are whatever, I don't know, a U2 or a Metallica or so a band that has 30, 40 years of career to pull songs from, I can understand the 2 hour, maybe even 2 hour plus. Even I'd say 2 hour plus from anyone is a bit of a stretch. You hear about those Bruce Springsteen 3 hour songs at shows, and I think, geez, that's a bit much for me. It gets. I don't think anyone. I'm trying to think. There might be some. I'm trying to think. I think when I saw Opeth in 2006, they played for about 90 minutes, and I was wanting more. But most bands, after they finish playing, I'm thinking, yeah, that's enough. An hour and 20 minutes, they left you wanting more, but at the same time satisfied. If they'd gone on for 2 hours, it would have been too much. Like I said, they had a midsection where some of their songs are quite samey, and that's just a fact. If they'd pushed out the set longer for another 45 minutes, it would have had a real danger of kind of being a bit of a morass in the middle and not being able to kind of differentiate. But they did very well in picking their set list, and also picking, or restricting it to the time that they did. I haven't really talked much about the CD, have I? So the CD was $30, a bit expensive, but I'm happy to support them. Like I said, I think that's something that I can appreciate. Kind of an independent band doing it their own way. Um, I I feel good to support them. And B, or two, did I say A? Did I start with A and B, or one and two? Second point, like I said, with shipping, because I can't buy this anywhere in New Zealand. If I had shipped it in, it would have cost me more anyway. So yeah. Bad point. It's in this goddamn cardboard case, which obviously is just the norm nowadays. But I'm so, how am I going to keep this unless it's so hard to keep them in good condition. Is my point. This album is mixed quietly, volume up. Okay, mixed quietly. That's interesting. Man, I trust Oncle Jazz. Apparently, the bass player drew this as his idea of a poodle. Doesn't actually have any kind of liner notes, does it? That's interesting. What else can I say? I'm just kind of like dumping about my experience from last night. But yeah, so I've covered so my experience of discovering them and my fandom growing to the point where I go to see them live and buy their CD. The concert itself, which I said was cool. It was sold out as well, but it wasn't too crowded. Obviously, they restrict the capacity to a safe degree, so it's not absolutely ram packed. Good set list, good set time. I like the drum. I should say that I like the drummer. The drummer's not a full-time member. He's a touring drummer. I'll check his name exactly, but I don't know. He had something interesting about him. Eric Maillet, Maillet. Their music is restrained drumming. Some of it even sounds like he's drumming with brushes. Maybe I'm not sure, but the way he had kind of a jazz stance to his drumming, and he was wearing a huge oversized T-shirt. I noticed. Is there anything else I want to say? No, I think that's about it. So yeah, that's my experience with Men I Trust. From discovering them, just seeing a name on Spotify, to listening to all their work, to checking out when they were touring, if they were touring, and then by chance discovering they were coming relatively soon, buying tickets or getting tickets bought for me and going to the show. And I feel, yeah, it's nice. It's invigorating to go to see live music, especially after COVID, where we had like quite a long break of not being able to see many international touring bands down here. So, yeah. All right. So that was a long one and a bit rambly, but I highly, highly recommend checking out Men I Trust. Either this album or Untourable album, or some of their earlier stuff, um, like Headroom, which has got various vocalists, or I think they had a self-titled album as well. Um, they release a lot of their songs as singles as well. I've noticed, like for example, the song I was talking about, Billy Toppy, which is on Spotify. That was released last year, and Ring of the Past was just released this year, but they're not on any albums. So they kind of release a constant stream of singles, and then kind of put some of them onto an album, and then some of them are just singles. All right, thank you for watching.